we all fear, but she's here to tell us how it changed her life, how she's grown, and how her heart has grown through it. So please welcome Donna Marino.
Hi everyone, thank you. I'm a lot shorter than the rest.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better, I think. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Should I start this?
Did I not start?
Just that. All right. Okay, thank you all for being here. September 10th, 2001 was a normal evening. It was a Monday night. I was home with my husband. We were both grad students in the DC area, and we were just about to sit down to watch a movie. And the phone rang, and I let it go to the answering machine. You guys remember those, right? What I miss about the answering machine still is that you could hear the person's voice and then decide if they were worth picking up for. Well, I heard my father's voice, and I loved my father's voice. It was all deep and gruff and grumbly, and he had been away on vacation, and so I was eager to talk to him. So even though we just sat down to watch this movie, I picked up. And I talked to him, and we talked about he was going to come to visit next month. I was going to have my graduation ceremony for my master's on my way to my doctorate. And it was a great conversation. And I had no idea it was going to be the last one I would ever have with him. The next day would be September 11th, 2001. And it would be the day my life changed forever. And really all of yours too. I woke up early that morning, and my husband and I drove into the city, I to go to grad school and him to go to work. And I got there really early because I was TAing a class. So I didn't see any of the coverage. And about halfway through the class, we had a break. It was a 3-hour class, and all the students started talking. And I heard mumblings and things like that. And I heard something about a plane and something about the towers, but I don't know if you remember, but at that time, there were a lot of celebrities that thought they were pilots and had to emergency land their planes. And I just assumed it was just a little plane, and these towers were so huge. So when I heard, I just said, "Oh, my dad works in those buildings." I'd always been so proud of that, except it was met with dead silence, and everyone stopped. And my professor said, do you need to call your father? And I thought, my dad works like construction. I can't call my dad. And I didn't understand. And so the class resumed, but just moments later, another professor came in and said, "I'm sorry to tell you all, you need to evacuate. The Pentagon has been hit." It was at that moment that I knew that this was terrorism. And it was at that moment that my terror began. I went into my professor's office and I called my husband immediately. He worked down the street from the White House. And he picked up and he said, "What do you know?" And I thought, pardon my French, oh shit. Except the worst thing I could think and say was, "You mean my father could be hurt?" It never crossed my mind that it could be worse than that. So we evacuated the building, and I came out on the streets of Arlington, Virginia, and it was just mass people coming out of buildings and a whole city evacuating. The strangest sight. And as I walked down the street, there was a man talking on a cell phone next to me, and he kind of turned to the crowd and said, "One of the towers just collapsed." And I thought, "You jerk, that's not funny." And I went into a nearby restaurant because I had to wait to meet my husband to drive back home. And so I went in to use the restroom. And as I came out from the restroom, I caught my first glimpse of the TVs over the bar. And I saw the second tower fall. The tower my father was in, although I did not know that at the time. I just remember my eyes going wide and my jaw dropping open and my hand just coming up to cover my mouth. And the hostess must have seen me and asked if I was okay, and I could barely get the words out. My father is in those buildings. I came out and met up with my husband. We got in the car and he drove like a bat out of hell to get us home. I have no idea how we got home as fast as we did. He immediately got on the phone and called all our friends, and they all came over to be with us. And I started calling my family one by one. My brother, who was also an electrician and an apprentice and could have been with my father, but he was okay. My other brother, who lived in Boston and flew out of Logan regularly, but he was okay. And then my mom and my sister, who worked together in Brooklyn and had a view of the Manhattan skyline. And my mom just said to me, Donna, he's a fighter. He's a fighter, Donna. Like it would be okay. I remember that night going to bed and thinking, how can this day be over? I don't know anything. Nothing has changed. Nothing has happened. And I didn't know that that would be my thought for a very long time. The next day, my husband and I drove up to New York to be with our family. And I remember coming over the Verrazano Bridge and seeing the Manhattan skyline and seeing all that smoke. And at the same time that we were doing this, we had the radio on and they were talking about how many body parts they had found so far. I remember pulling up in front of my house, the house I grew up in, my father's house, and seeing my two brothers and my sister and my mom and the lawn just covered with people sitting and waiting. And I remember jumping out of the car to be with my family. I don't even know if my husband had stopped the car yet. I just ran out to hold them. And the next 4 days, we would sit in that house day after day as people came and went and brought food and tried to comfort us. And I remember that dreadful feeling every night as we went to bed and knew nothing, and every morning as we woke up and had to do it all over again. And I remember 4 days later leaving to go back to DC with no father, no information, nothing. What people don't know about the 9/11 experience, unless you've lost someone, is the excruciating aftermath. The days and months that went by with either no information or misinformation or just constant media coverage. You see, my father was a missing person. So we were waiting. We were waiting for someone to tell us it was time to stop waiting. Only that never came. And so I remember at 25 sitting on the balcony of my little garden apartment and just praying and pleading, you know, that bargaining stage of grief. Dear, dear God, you know, if you're a miracle maker, if you can do something, we have no body, we have no remains, we have nothing. You can send him home. And I would imagine him walking up the stairs into our house with no memory of what happened or no explanation, but I wouldn't care as long as he was home with me. I just longed for my father, and I felt like a ghost. I described to someone once what it felt like, and I said it was like somebody just reached into my chest and ripped out my heart, but they left me a sliver just so I would always know what I was missing. And that's what it felt like. And then on top of that, my life was on the news all the time. This private, personal, excruciating event was in my face everywhere I went. I remember the first time I went to a movie and enjoyed it. Afterwards, my husband and I walked into a bookstore, and on the display table, every single book, and I'm not exaggerating, every single book had a picture of 9/11 on the cover. And I had to leave. My father was a truly amazing man. He built those buildings, for one. He was there when they capped them off. He was one of the electricians that wired them. He worked there my entire life. And he was there when they went down. And my family has a long history with New York. My grandfather, also an electrician, did the lights on the Verrazano Bridge. And then my brother, at The Apprentice, he did the new Yankee Stadium. So the New York skyline is a part of our family. And I say New York is in our blood. Growing up, those towers were Daddy's towers, and the bridge was Grandpa's bridge. And every year, I used to get to go to the towers with all the other electricians' kids, and we used to get to run around the basement and go in all the nooks and crannies that the public's not allowed to, and go up to the observation deck, and even go on the roof sometimes. So when I went, everyone knew my dad too, and it was like he was a celebrity to me. I even got to see the Statue of Liberty's 100th birthday from the windows of the 105th floor. The same floor that my dad would last be on at Cantor Fitzgerald. So losing him was awful. But I knew that it could not be in vain. That even though I was only 25 and I was grief-stricken, I knew that my father's life had to have meaning and purpose. And I knew that in some way, he made a sacrifice for all of us and for me. And that I was going to now be his legacy. And that I was going to do good in the world. And that I was going to make him proud. Sorry. I wish that I could say that that was my only heart start, but I just don't think that's how life works. And I think especially for healers, we often get more than our fair share, but I think it's what helps us be the healers that we are. And so since then, I've had my fair share of heart starts from, postpartum depression, almost going blind in one eye after the birth of my second daughter, and saying goodbye to my first marriage. But most recently, my heart start came in October of 2017 when my younger sister chose to take her own life 2 weeks after her 40th birthday. So you see, it's not that my life has been easy, far from it. But I think that's the point. Every day I get to make a choice. Every day I get to choose whether I want to be a victim or a survivor. I get to choose whether I want to be a part of the darkness or the light. I can choose to be angry and resentful and sad and hurtful, or I can choose to savor every single moment with the people that I love. I can choose meaning and purpose, or I can choose to lay down and just let it take me. and so I choose meaning. When I lost my sister, she was my best friend. It was a real wake-up call for me. I thought, how am I living my life? And I kept hearing this quote in my head: how you live your days is how you live your life. And I realized that I was in this good, high-paying job, doing a lot of managerial work, and I had status and pay, but I was really unfulfilled, and I was really unhappy, and I was not present to my family when I was with them because I just had so much work swirling in my head. And so losing my sister was a call to me to course correct and to fulfill my life's purpose. And so I left my job, at first without a plan, and then later a plan formed, and I started my company, Inner Guidance, to help empower women to speak their truth, to own their power, and to fulfill their life's purpose. I really believe that we are all here for a reason, that God gave us our passion, our gifts, our talents, our strengths, because we are meant to use them, and not just on weekends and holidays, but every day. And so it's now my mission to empower women to own their power, to step out of their fear, and to step into their greatness. That is my life's purpose and my calling. And it's how I honor myself and my sister and all of my heart starts. I'd like to read this poem to you from Marianne Williamson called Our Deepest Fear, which I think most reflects the work that I'm meant to do in the world. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I want to leave you with this. No matter what your heart start is, be bold, be fabulous, be brilliant, and share your light with the world, because we are all waiting for you. Thank you.
Yeah, let's see what we've got. courage in sharing, such a difficult story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. Does anybody have a question or a comment for Donna? Oh, Dale has a microphone, which we'd like you to speak into just so that we can hear it on the video. Or not.
Okay, hello? Yeah.
You could repeat the question too, if we can. Nancy's gonna ask.
Hey Donna, this may sound really weird, but obviously we all think about your family. And our heart breaks for you. And know that your sharing has just brought it back to where it needed to be. We forget. And every year, when they show all of that, we need to see it. And I know it's hard for you, but we need to see it. And I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So tell us about Inner Guidance. This is the name of your company.
Yes.
This is what you're doing now
Yeah.
when you left your previous position.
Yes.
Yeah. What's on tap?
So I do coaching with women to help them fulfill their life's purpose and move past the self-doubt and the sabotage and the fear that gets in the way. If they need help getting clarity about what their purpose is, I do that. Or I help them really just commit to it and fulfill it. I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs in the health and wellness industries. And I like to say, in the words of Brene Brown, I also work with the midlife unraveling.
We know all about that.
Yes. Yeah, so I do coaching, retreats, workshops, speaking events, things like that.
Yeah. Do you have a retreat coming up? Did I see that?
I do. I have a retreat coming up the first weekend in April that's going to be in Michigan for 3 days, and it's going to be fabulous. We're going to be covering health, wealth, joy, and relationships, and really helping you move past the blocks to achieve what you want in those areas.
Great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. What's the name of the poem you just read?
Our Deepest Fear by Marianne Williamson.
I thank you so much for talking. I never knew anybody that was in that, so it just made it so real. So you're the first person that I know, and it just made it so real. And I'll never think of that date again the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll say a prayer for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Donna's first time telling that story in front of people.
Yeah.
Laura just said, how am I gonna go after that? Okay, our next speaker, I told you we're gonna cover a lot of heart territory here. It's a very different kind of heart start. Sonu Marchiretto, I've known for a long time, but so enjoyed hearing more about this part of your story, and I really think all of you will too. It's an immigrant perspective that I think we all, really need to hear about her heart start of coming to America when she was 6. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Sonu.
I don't know how to work that timer, so. I'm Sonu. A lot of you know me, but some of you who don't, my name is Sonu Marchiretto, and I'd like to tell you about my heart start. and it is the love for this country, the good old US of A. And I want to tell you about my immigration story. Immigration, I guess, has been in the news a lot lately, and my story is probably not that much different than others who make this journey to start a whole new life. Our story is probably, some of your grandparents or parents or great-grandparents or even you experienced this story. But my parents and I, we're from India, and we lived a very middle-class life in India. We lived mostly in the rural areas. My dad was coal mining engineer. And my mom and dad, they were both educated. My mom was a doctor, and my dad was the engineer. And they both worked, and we lived in these housing complexes that were very middle class. We had a housekeeper. We had people who took care of us. I mean, I had nannies. My sister and I attended an English school, and we lived a very stable life. And we even had a car in India, which was pretty unusual for that time. We took vacations every year, and we would visit my cousins in New Delhi in the rural areas. I remember taking a train there. But my dad always had this adventure bug. He wanted to go, this is my dad and me and my sister. He had his heart set on moving out west. He wanted to come here to this country. Maybe the person who probably did his heart start was his mom, my grandma. And my grandma is instrumental in this story and why I fell in love with the United States. My grandma, we call her Oma. She was married at the age of 13, and she had 5 kids by the time she was 20. And that's when her husband died, and she became a widow. So widows in India, this is my grandma, always wear white. And as long as I remember my grandma, she wore white. And it was always a white sari. I think in her 80s, she moved to like a little yellow sweater. But white was always her color. So when Oma, her story, we called her Oma, when she lost her husband, she was also very lost. She had 3 girls and 2 boys. My dad was 6 months old when his dad died. And she was left to take care of them as a single mom in India, which is also fairly unusual for at that time in the 50s. And Amma did not know how to read or write. Amma's family, my grandfather's family, stepped in and helped her. So they kind of, like her extended family took over the care of the girls, and Amma's family educated my grandma. So she learned how to read and write. She became a school teacher, and she started working as a single mom, and she raised her 2 boys the best way she knew how. And again, single working mom in the 1950s India was an unusual story. She taught my dad and uncle how to read and write, and they went on to college. And when my uncle graduated college and he got married, he immigrated to Europe. And then my grandma went with him. So of course, she was a package deal between my dad and my uncle. And so she would spend time with my uncle for a couple months, and then she would come to India and spend time with my mom and dad and my sister and me. And she would talk about all these adventures in the United States, and I was her audience. And she would tell me stories, and she would talk about this family. And she would tell me stories upon stories about this family that traveled in a bus, and they were in a band, and they got into and I was like, oh my God, I want to come to this magic place and so she, my dad was always wanting to come here, so when he got his papers, he was like, I am ready. And we got ours, he left a year before we did. So when we got our immigration papers, I was like, I couldn't wait to come to this country. My heart start was the United States. So I was excited. And if my dad would have come to pick us up in a school bus, that would have been so, but you know, we all have a mom story, so I have a mom story. So I was in heaven. My mom was not. She came to the USA and she was a practicing physician. She left everything. She left, and if you imagine, we came on an Air India flight, 2 suitcases apiece. We packed up our whole house. All our belongings went to someone else, and we came with 2 pieces of luggage apiece. All of our stuff in 2 bags. My mom and my sister and I boarded the plane, and my mom said, literally, we boarded the plane with $6 between the 3 of us. And I know there's a Netflix special, if any of you have seen this comedian goes, every Indian will tell you they came to this country with an inordinately small amount of money. But it is true. $6. My mom confirmed that. And so she said, we stopped in, our layover was in London, and we got a tea and sandwiches for $4. And then I wanted these headphones, and she said, she wouldn't let me have them because they were $1 a piece. So we finally landed in Chicago at O'Hare, and I still get, like, O'Hare always, those runways late at night all lit up with the blue and the red always sparks me. I'm always thrilled. But, you know, my mom was not so thrilled. So she was 37, and we had 2 young kids, me and my sister, and she discovered that the only thing that counted was her education. So she had to start over again. Her years of practice did not count. So we lived in an apartment complex. We had a 2-bedroom apartment, an old Oldsmobile. Like, our car was like, it didn't have those back defrost lights, you know, so my dad had a fan, and it would make a hole in the fog. It's just like one little hole where you could see. And we also experienced snow for the first time when we came. It was the blizzard of 1978. Fond memory of snow. The polar vortex is nothing compared to that blizzard. So I remember my sister and I, we had like 2 pairs of pants, 2 turtlenecks, but I was thrilled with all of that. My mom wasn't. She told me a story about one day that she decided to walk to Good Sam Hospital. So we lived on Belmont and Ogden. There was these apartment complexes there. And so she walked to Good Sam to see if there was a job available. So my mom was 5 feet tall, so she always wore heels. So she never wanted to be, you know, like that, whatever. So she wore heels. So she walked out to Good Sam, and she put on some applications. And as she was walking home, her heel broke. And so she remembers that she had the first, like, I hate this place moment. She broke her other heel, she walked home, and she wanted to pack. She packed, and she wanted to go back. And our saving grace about not going back was a one-way ticket. So she said, had we had a return ticket, she would have grabbed me by the hair and taken me back, but she did not. So she literally picked herself up by both her heels and got to work. She started studying, she started taking her exams, she started passing, she got a residency, she worked with 20-somethings. She did what she thought she had to do. And she still always wanted to go back to her easier life in India. Her and I would argue about her leaving and me staying. We had some really good fights, as all moms and daughters do. She started practicing as a physician, so she started to relax a bit. And she persevered. She did. She persevered. She achieved her goals. And she, you know, started working and being successful in her professional life. But when she would come home, she always made us warm dinner every single night. I remember her. And then, so as far as my story goes, like being raised by women like that, or by my parents, I did what I had to do. I went to school, I graduated, And my grandma still told me stories, so now she would come visit me and my dad, but both in Canada and the USA. So, but now we could watch the episodes together, so the stories were not so much stories. We lived in Downers Grove, so growing up here, there were some people who didn't want us here. We had eggs thrown at our house, we had rocks through our windows, we would get some prank phone calls. My parents sheltered us a lot from all of the negative, and then they believed that we should rise above those types of behaviors. So I was just really not deterred by the negativity of the ignorant people. And then my heart also did not waver for my love for this country. And, growing up in a two-parent house where you were loved and protected, we did eventually start going on vacations. We started, we had one car, then we got 2 cars. And we had some happy times, and then we really had some sad times. I lost my sister in a car accident. I feel like I've kind of lived the whole rainbow or gamut of the American experience. And I did this to myself too. I chose a path in college that I thought I had to do. And then at the age of 40, I decided I wanted to become a nurse. And I went back to school, and I graduated as a nurse, and I found my true calling. And now I've dabbled in becoming an entrepreneur for myself too, so I'm full of everything. So I got married. Here's my mom doing her residency. And then I have 2 amazing and beautiful children. My daughter, she just graduated from the Air Force Academy, and now is attending medical school. And then my son, at Columbia College in the city. I think I'm living the best American life. I really do. And as I'm in my 50s, and I reflect on my life of my family, I think of a story that my grandma told me. She was telling me about it, not a TV show. It was an Indian story of a prince at a crossroads. He was talking to God, and he had to make a decision about choosing something difficult or something easy. God would point out to him that he had the free will to make the choice and make the decision and weigh the consequence of each decision. The path was his to choose. I thought my parents chose the difficult path by giving everything up and moving to a new nation. This path had a lot of curves. We've had a lot of curves, but my parents have made a great life for all of us, I think. I think about how resilient both my mom and grandma were, and I think we all view resiliency as something American, but I think it's American because it's what every immigrant experiences and does. So maybe it is American because it's an immigrant trait. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm sure Jacob would have loved that his face was just like hanging up there for the remainder of the, right? That was not fair. Sonu's daughter Mira is here. Sorry, Mira. Anybody have any questions for Sonu? You want to ask her?
Your mom's still alive?
Oh, yeah.
Still working, right?
She actually is. She will never quit. Yeah. She's
where?
In Ohio, in a small town, Gallipolis, Ohio. So she loves her job so much that when she retired, the clinic said, "You will be our permanent substitute." So whenever the doctor goes on vacation, my mom is there. Yeah.
Dana.
Mira, how did your folks get, what was the incentive for them to go to Ohio from Chicago?
I think just jobs.
Just jobs.
Jobs, yeah.
Oh, did I call you Mira?
Yeah.
I answered Mira.
It's okay, Dana's excited.
died. So it's just one of those, it was easier to stay in school than do anything else. Just go through the motions. I don't think I dealt with her passing till later, yeah. Do everything you can. And you do things that make you happy. Right, right, exactly.
Anyone else? Any first one?
So now, where do you practice now? Because you're a good singer.
At Hinsdale.
Although you're in Hinsdale, and what kind of nursing?
I'm in the recovery room. Recovery room right after surgery.
She runs it.
We'll brag for her.
Do we have another question back here? Sorry. No? Thank you.
You know, Cindy, the last couple times we've done like a stand-up break. Does anyone feel like we have one more speaker? Does anyone want to take a quick break or keep on going? Keep on going.
Nice. Good work.
I am thinking all those poor women at the college planning night, they are missing a great night here tonight, right? So good. Donna is so new, awesome. And Laura. So Laura Evely, our next speaker, I know through our mutual friend Margot, so met years ago, and over the years we would kind of pop in and out of each other's lives. And when Everyday Deep started, I knew that Laura had to be a speaker. You'll find that she's hilarious, so we're going to cover another part of the heart here. Laura, on your bio you wrote, Laura says she loves life and tries to find humor in every situation, even when she shouldn't. So that, right? That kind of sets it up right there. So I don't want to step on that. So welcome, Laura Evely.
Two daughters, Elizabeth and Lauren, who are now in college, and my husband Tom, and I think we're quite a striking family. I don't know, people seem to look at us when we walk down the street, so I don't know what it is. It must be our looks. So anyway, when Dale asked me a few months ago, I had this moment a few months ago. Can you hear me out?
Nice there?
Can you hear me? I mean, it's okay if you can't. You're not missing it. So it was 10:30 at night, and can you picture this? I'm walking out of a bar, and you know how it's been. It's been freezing cold, and I'm shaking, so I zip up my jacket, and I put my hood up, and I'm running to my car, and I'm just, it's miserable, it's cold, and I jump in, and I start my car, and all of a sudden my favorite song comes blasting on the radio, and I just, at that moment, I just yelled, "I love life!" I mean, it was just like a few swear words in there, but it was just so happy in that moment. And it was like all my happiness stars were perfectly aligned. I had just been doing one of my favorite things on earth, followed by a FEB song, and despite the cold and the depressing week and the crazy work I had, I was just so happy in that moment. And it made me think, it's like, I know so many people who really never experienced that happiness. And that made me a little sad. But then I'm like, I'm good. So I just finished belting out my song and I drove home. So when Dale asked me to do this about Heart Start, I immediately thought of that moment. And the answer to what starts my heart is fun. And like everything that ultimately shapes our world, it starts with my childhood. So I truly believe that my zest for life is a direct result of the fact that I grew up surrounded by death. But like these people who had really bad experiences, mine was a little bit different. I was raised in the small river town of Awaken, Illinois, which is about 2 hours from here, 2,000 people, and I was the only girl sandwiched between two brothers. And I came from one of those generational families. I grew up in the same house that my grandma grandfather grew up in, and my dad grew up in, and I grew up in, and now my cousin bought it, and now his kids are being raised in it. So we're the Lenz family. There's a whole lot of Lenz going on in that house. And all the men worked for our family business, our funeral home. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my uncle, and my dad were all undertakers. So it all started in 1896 when my family began Lenz Brothers Furniture and Undertaking. I know, you're thinking, who doesn't want to shop there? It's like the Amazon, undertaking, and furniture. So a short history lesson though, because furniture and funeral homes originally went together. So undertakers, the furniture business, they were casket makers. And in that time, there wasn't a lot of options in the world of casket. It was like called a fiddle casket, which looked like a glorified violin case. And so people wanted something nicer. They went to the cabinet makers, they made them, and then they kind of merged from there. So this was our funeral home, and my grandparents lived 2 blocks from me. So I was there all the time. As a kid, there was no place cooler or scarier than our funeral home. First, you have to understand the layout of the house. In the basement was the embalming room, where they prepared the bodies. And down the hall from that was a casket room, where you had all the caskets. And then across from that was a rec room where we had parties. That makes sense, right? So we had a bar, we had a slot machine as a cool when you were a kid, we had a player piano, and we would hang out there, and my grandparents would have parties down there. You go up the stairs, and on the first floor was the office, which to me was the creepiest room in the house. It had all these dead relatives hanging on the wall. There's my dad, who's not creepy, but the rest of them were. And then on that floor were 2 really long chapels where the services were held. And you go upstairs, that was where my grandparents lived. So they lived on the 2nd floor of the funeral home. And they had, living room, dining room. It was like any home. 2 bedrooms, kitchen, and it was lovely. So when I would sleep there, and I did all the time, my bedroom was at the top of the stairs, and if there was someone, a funeral the next day, the casket was basically at the bottom of the stairs. So I was afraid to sleep in my own house, but at the funeral home, forget about it. I would be sleeping in the bed, the clock, they had a grandfather clock, creepy that is. It would strike midnight, I'd have the covers over my head. I was just convinced that body was gonna walk up the stairs and grab me. And I thought about it all the time. I had a recurrent dream that I was always looking at the casket, and it's always an old man, and he would grab me and he would hold me up over his head, and I'd be kicking and I'd be screaming, and my family could never ever get to me, or that there was a glass casket and they were throwing dirt on me. So that was, your usual childhood dream. Another thing that scared the pants off of me is my gran would ask me to go down to the basement to the refrigerator to get ice cream. And the refrigerator was right across from the embalming room. So this wasn't the time of pampered children when your parents would say, "Oh, I'll go with you." Or my brothers weren't gonna help me. No, I was on my own. So I'd have to go down 2 flights of stairs, and they were dark, and then I'd get to the refrigerator, and the embalming room door would or would not be open, and then I would grab my ice cream and I'd run for my life, or what so it seemed, and get back upstairs, or I had to take the elevator. The elevator, it was so creepy. It was designed to easily move bodies and caskets between floors. So it had doors on either side, and 2 walls, and no ceiling. So when you're in the basement on the elevator, you could look up and you could see the 1st floor and the 2nd floor door just floating in the air, and then the attic. And when it went, the whole house would hum and it would vibrate. So you always knew when a body was coming in the house, whether it was 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., you just knew. And one time my grandfather was in the elevator, and it didn't stop at the top. It just cracked all the plaster, and now I have a whole Willy Wonka fear. It's not it's gonna go to the ground, it's gonna shoot out the roof. So you're probably thinking, wow, this talk about death when you're here to hear about the heart. So because this home that was centered around death was filled with so much life. And my family was so respectful of everyone who came in there and the dead. But again, it was a home, and as my dad once said, you have to have a sense of humor to be in this business. So imagine hide and seek in a funeral home. The lights are off, everything is pitch black. You know, we were looking for my uncle one time, and we were going around everything. We finally open the elevator door, and he jumps down from the top of it and just scares the pants off of us. Or, you know, playing Easter egg hunt in the chapel, where, you know, there may or may not be a casket, but it's Easter and it's our home, so that's how it went. And everywhere, you know, we had every family party there. My cousins and I played red light, green light, and go, go, go in the chapel. As a kid, it was just open rooms and places to play, and it was amazing. And in the rec room, we pushed caskets out of the way in the basement and played with crutches and wheelchairs, because my family also, before there was public ambulances, they were the ambulance people. So we would have all, like, crutches were so cool when you were little, right? And my family, and when we were sick or my parents were going out of town, this really was a place where we would stay and were taken care of and were loved. It was like any grandparent's home, except one dark twist. And my family is not what you would imagine from a bunch of undertakers. My grandfather, this is him, and that is not my grandmother. But he would put on we'd go out to restaurants and we'd go to the country club, and he'd put on a wig and he would start dancing in the middle of there, in the middle of the restaurant, and everyone would be so embarrassed, but I thought it was the coolest thing and the funniest thing ever. And as I'm evaluating this, I kind of do the same thing myself. And so the apple really doesn't fall far from the tree. And my dad, he was the first person to drive a motorcycle through the local tavern. He once stole a fire truck, and then we had to buy it, so we owned a fire truck. My uncle drove like a bat out of hell and crashed his motorcycle going over 100 miles an hour and lived. And me, I was born on May 30th, or traditional Memorial Day. So back before Memorial Day was a 3-day weekend, it was called Traditional Memorial Day. And so I thought that was so special because it was Len's Memorial Home. I was born on Memorial Day. And the other thing that was really, really special about that was, it was the one day of the year the mausoleum was open. Talk about full circle. Memorial Home, Memorial Day, and my birthday mausoleum. I mean, come on. I can't believe it. My parents used to take me there as a child on my birthday, so much cheaper than Chuck E. Cheese. But through all these stories and all these memories, I think the one thing I took away is that you need to enjoy life, and you can't take life yourself too serious, because tomorrow, who knows? Which is my very, very, very lengthy explanation of why I'm a proactive seeker of fun. As we all know, fun and laughter all have all kinds of benefits. And just as importantly, they keep you young. And look at me, I'm 85 years old. So I don't know, I think I look pretty good for my age. So to help you feel and look your best, I created the Laura Everly rules of fun and happiness. Because the two go hand in hand. And to me, they're kind of like, you know, an Elle's 4 favorite food groups: candy, candy canes, candy corn, and syrup. And by the way, that's my brother, and that's my babysitter, Ha-Ha, who took care of me when I was a child. So rule number 1 is find your fun trigger. This is about identifying what it is that really fills you up, that thing that gives you an afterglow that you can talk about for weeks to come. You know, maybe for some of you it's knitting, you go to a convention, or Jello wrestling. For me, there's several things. Music and travel are high on my list, but my absolute favorite thing to do is to go see Elvis impersonators. I love them. So this is J. Elvis, he was my first. And there have been plenty since. Because I know if I go see an Elvis impersonator, there's going to be happiness from ear to ear. It's not that I love Elvis, it's I love the utter cheesiness of an Elvis impersonator. Thin or fat, good or bad, I just know I'm going to have a good time, I'm going to know every song, I'm going to talk to people, I'm going to be on the dance floor, I'm going to embarrass myself and leave happy. In fact, this Elvis obsession has seeped into the rest of my life, which leads me to my next rule. Surround yourself with fun. Okay, I have a lot of crap in my house. house, and for my friends here, they can testify to this. I blame my parents because they're borderline hoarders and collectors, but we do have interesting things. So, I have an Elvis collection, which Dale here has contributed to. I have my Mona Lisa that hangs over my couch in my living room. I have Kiss dolls on the top of my cabinets. And I always like to have music playing, so I try to create an environment that's fun, that makes me feel happy, and that my friends can come and enjoy. And how can you be sad when you're looking at the Mona Lisa every time you walk into your living room? Number 3, and I think this is the most important rule of all, always embarrass your friends. I'm not going to say, but it was a memorable night for some of us. Rule number 4, elevate your fun playing field. So to ensure a good time, my friends and I have a secret weapon, and it's our doll, Casserole Jean. So, my friend Debbie got this doll, and we started taking her out with us. And then my friend Debbie invented a thing called leg shots, where we take the doll's leg off, and everybody drinks out of it. And I gotta tell you, you'd be surprised how many people you can get to do that. And it brings everyone together. And but now she's down to one leg, so we're really protective. And we tried arm shots, and you just really can't get much in the arm. And we tried body cavity shots, but all the liquid disappears. So we're protecting that. But we've taken her, we've traveled with her. She's spiced up wedding receptions. She's ridden a camel in Dubai. She's been on a TV shoot in Nebraska, safaried in Africa, and she's 93% responsible for my friend meeting her husband. So yeah, it works. Okay, rule number 4, or 5, be a continual fun seeker. Fun just doesn't fall in your lap, you need to find it. So I try to sign up for mailings and alerts and everything that lets me know when something fun is coming into town. So keep your eyes open unless you're asleep. All right, rule number 6, my last one, is make time for fun. And believe me, I love a good night on the couch, but it's really rarely a source of entertainment and fun. So, if you find something, call your friends, buy tickets, put it on your calendar, just do something, get yourself out of the house and do it, or you'll blow it off. So these are the rules I try to live by, and I try to pass my passion and positivity on to my daughters. And I think through my daughters, I believe my childhood and family story has come full circle. So this is my daughters in the hearse when they were little. So one Memorial Day, my daughters went and they cleaned my birthday mausoleum all on their own, so it would look nice the one day of the year that was open. So I gotta tell you, that was a very proud moment that my kids were gonna do that. But they really, they're passionate about it, and they knew that it's a cool thing to respect the dead and go do that. So they did that. And then one year on Halloween, my dad stopped by my house, and he'd just been at the airport to pick up a body. And I, on that day, had to go pick up my daughter from school on Halloween to come home and change her outfit. So we thought, let's pick her up in the hearse, right? On Halloween, how cool is that to get picked up in the hearse? So we went, we got Lauren and her friends and her friend, Emma Gammon-Lee, and they got in the hearse and they were like, wow, this is fun. My daughter, I could not find her anywhere. She was on the playground crying hysterically and said to me, why do you always do this to me? And I thought, I've never picked you up before. But apparently she was not happy. But don't worry. She later learned to love the funeral home and all this stuff. She used to help my dad at funerals. And during her senior year at Downers Grove North, she and her friends drove to Lakin, and they had their post-prom party in the funeral home, which they claim they don't have any photos of, but I know I do. But they did enjoy some country living, and that's a picture of them together. And together, my girls and I love to visit cemeteries, so we're a little dark, but our hearts are full of life. And we all know that life changes. So in 2012, after my grandparents had been gone for several years, my dad and my uncle decided to retire from the funeral business after 115 years. And, you know, like when they sold my family home, I was like, hey, okay. But when they got rid of the funeral home, it was like, we were devastated. But we understood, and so we did everything we could to soak up every last. We had the last get-together with our cousins. We had the last sleepover with friends where my girls rummaged through the amazing attic one last time, and they had one last fashion show in the chapel. And then we played one last game of funeral home hide and seek. And on that day, when the new owners walked in and the girls and I walked out for the very last time, we had lots of tears in our eyes, but we had a million lasting memories in our hearts. So this is my story and how a funeral home shaped me and taught me to enjoy life and started my heart for fun.
I clearly need to learn your photo editing skills. Right?
Yeah. I don't know, the tape is pretty good.
Dude, I tried with like some sort of program and I wasted a whole lot of time. That was awesome, thanks. But just to recap, so the family home was also actually the funeral home.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So grandparents on the second floor, funerals were on the first floor.
Wow.
Everything was in the basement, and I lived 2 blocks away. And you know, in a small town, when you're 4 years old, you didn't want one by yourself.
Wow. All right, and my other question is, do your kids think you're funny?
So I think they're starting to. They did take casserole one time. Oh, they took her on a bond-filled run. So.
Excellent name, by the way.
Yeah.
Casserole, yeah. Jean, yes, yes.
So, I don't know, but yes.
Yeah.
I guess they do.
Any questions for Laura?
I have a picture of it.
Yeah, you're. So, we're gonna hang out later and find out what's up with the picture.
It kind of looked like this Valley Doyle floor.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Laura,
What is the backstory of Casserole Jean anyway? How did she get to be the party girl that she is?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but
Okay.
we had a long time a white trash party, and my friend, that was her part of her costume, and then we lost her for a long, long time, and then we pretended that we found her, and then, I don't know, we just took her
How
on
did
a
you
trip,
find
and
out her legs popped off?
that's my friend Debbie, she just figures things out, yeah. But it's funny.
I mean, is that a nickname?
Laura, what is birth?
Yeah.
Question?
Just kick out of the name.
No, that was Debbie.
Oh,
She
that is
always
just
loved the name
brilliant.
Casserole Jean.
I wish
We
I
kind of need to say it with the accent. Casserole Jean? Yeah. And Casserole Jean doesn't have an accent, so she's quiet. Yes, yeah, Jean.
I think that you said that Debbie grew up with you
Oh, yeah, she
in
grew
your
up.
hometown, so
yeah,
she's
and
just
like-
a stranger.
She was a bowling alley heiress, and I am the funeral home heiress.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cindy, I have to ask you a question, because remember I was telling you about, so this girl, Laura Eberly, and she has a whole room in her house that has all Elvis memorabilia, and she carries this doll around with her, and Cindy's like, what? Who is
How do I not know this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Casserole was just in Arizona, so.
Oh my God. That's pretty
I don't.
Where is she tonight?
Yeah, it's been a
She
long-
should have been here.
Oh, she should. It's been a long week. I don't have a picture of Elvis her because then I started business, and so my tablecloths are all in there right now. So everything kind of got packed up, and it's a mess. So it's kind of sad, but it's fine.
Any other questions for Laura?
Describe your business.
I designed and invented this thing called a birthday tablecloth, and so it's Yes, it's a thing that you bring out every year on a child's birthday, and it has numbers 1 through 10 on it. It's all applique. And so on the first birthday, everybody signs the 1, and then on the second year, everybody signs the 2. So they have all these memories of their birthday, so cards get thrown in a drawer, but this comes out every year, so it's, the grandparents' names are on it, so MabelMabel.com. That's right.
Very cool. Who's Mabel?
I just love the
Just
name.
love the name.
Mabel strong and able to keep your elbows off the table.
Ah,
So,
there you go.
Table related, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Laura. Thank Am I standing here?
How are we supposed to follow that?
I don't know. I have no props. I can pull up that photo of you again.
So, so you made it through the clothing racks to get here then? So Laura told me that she had a stress dream a couple of days ago about getting lost in clothing racks, and she went to the printer and she couldn't get here, and so we're glad that you did make it here, Laura. But it's a great segue.
Nice, Gail. It was good work. Yeah.
So Cindy and I have started doing small groups too. So last time, what was it, February 9th, it was a group of 12, and so we're all here sharing our deeper selves and stories, and we're doing small groups now to have a more intimate space to do that. So our next one is about dream work and journaling, and how together they help you understand yourself more deeply.
Right.
And so if you're curious how to understand your dreams, I've worked for years with my dreams and have training in it, and Cindy in positive psychology has worked a lot in journaling, and it's really a fun, that was a great morning, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And if you would like to experience the treehouse during the day, it's lovely. So come and join us for that. I feel like I'm Ed McMahon, like you're talking about. I'm just going, right? Say something else profound and I'll just nodding. Yes. Yes, you covered all that.
Okay, so there's flyers and then on our website. And then next month, we have Spring Forward. Kelly Reed is going to be one of our speakers. Heather Ploon, our own Heather Ploon, is going to speak, and Barnali Kuntia. So another great night, so March 20th, and we hope that you join us. And again, tonight was just fantastic. Each and every one of you. Imagine it takes a lot of time to put these talks together, and again, when you're really sharing something personal, so thank all of you so much for doing that. So what else do we have here? Oh, and I'll say we are pretty well booked through the rest of the year, but if you're sitting there and you're thinking, you know what, I could see myself up there, on our website, or email me or talk to me. I'd love to talk to you more about it. We're modeling imperfection right now.
Oh, this is where I say, please join our Facebook. And the Book of Face. Please join us on the Book of Face. And you said this earlier, but a lot of people couldn't make it tonight. There's a big thing going on at Downers Grove North. And we know they missed a great night, didn't they? But we are videoing this, and we put the videos up on Facebook. So tell people that they can check in and look for us there. Good? No more lines are written for me. Oh, thank you to our wonderful speakers. We said that already. Thank you, ladies, so much for sharing yourselves and your stories with us. Thank you to our volunteers. It takes a lot to get this pulled together, and we had a great crew tonight. Ann Gresham, Kristen Byrne, Terry Brzezinski, Linda Thorin, and Therese Burke all helped us. changes, and also so that you have time to kind of mingle and talk to each other if you like to. So please do that. But while you're doing that, I always say this, fold up your chair and put it over against the wall. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month.